Zoom has really screwed everything up. This whole update, Joe. And I'm sorry, but you're here for the first one.
Ah, man, I'm very pleased to be here.
Um,
I'm glad I'm the first of the update.
yeah. I mean, if anybody is supposed to be here for the update, the first one of it, it's you. So thank you. Um, Joe, getting right into it with you here. When did you start making music under your own name? When did that kind of start?
Oh, so it started maybe 20. I mean, I always kind of like as soon as I got into actually playing music, I was always kind of, dabbling in sort of making my own stuff. But not I wasn't like I was always a band guy, so it was kind of like I'd be in other people's projects. On the side, I would kind of like noodle away, but not really doing anything seriously. But then either 2016 or 2017, I I had been on tour with a band that I was in. Um, as soon as the tour finished, I had this near death experience, this like crazy thing happened.
What
And
if you don't mind me asking, what was a near death experience?
oh man, it was pretty hectic. Basically I suppose like a birth defect where like my bowel was not mounted properly as it should, and for years and years it had been twisting. And I had just become conditioned to this like heinous pain um regularly. Basically the tour ended, it twisted, but it never twisted back. And so I had these few days of just like, getting absolutely, I was just in a world of pain. My partner was like, man, we need to go to the hospital. The hospital was like, checked me out and they were like, we can't find anything. Sent me home. I'd miraculously had a doctor's appointment that next day that I'd booked from like, I don't know, months before or something. Just the routine check. And my partner like wheeled me in, like literally like pretty much carried me in. I could hardly walk. And I've got this awesome doctor, this French guy. He's really like flamboyant and expressive. And I come in, just out to it, and he's literally just laughing. He's like, oh, he's like, this is crazy. Um, and he's like, you got to go back to the hospital, and I'm gonna make them do something. Went back to the hospital, got a CAT scan, and they're like, shit, yeah, this guy's like his bowel's really twisted. If it splits, could die kind of thing. So I went straight into emergency surgery. They operated, sorted it out, came out okay, thankfully. The last thing I remember was, signing the like in case of death form, and I was like, yeah, this isn't good.
I'd
Where
say
am I
not.
going?
Yeah.
So I survived, and then after that, I had a massive recovery period. I had like 6 months where I couldn't work, and in that time, I had bought a like a tape machine. I got this Tascam 388, $400, which was just like if anyone knows, they're becoming a bit of a cult classic, those machines. And 400 New Zealand dollars to you is like 200 US is
Oh, that's a
absolute steal.
steal. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfectly working. Yeah, so anyway, I had this tape machine, and it just so happened that the band I'd been on tour with, they had left all their gear at my place. Conveniently, that's where like we were storing the band stuff. Um, and then yeah, anyway, so I had 6 months to kind of find my voice, I suppose, and sort of noodle away on my own music. And that was the first time that I actually started sort of being like, oh, I wonder if I can do it myself, opposed to being like all these, just being a guitar player in a band, I was like, oh, I can try out my own lyrics. I can, because I had ideas, I had things that had been floating around previous to that, but there was the opportunity and the tool to give it a nudge. So yeah, I think in 2017, that's where I started making my own music as
Wow.
Joe Ghatt.
All right. Well, that's a heck of a beginning there. Uh
Yeah.
Now real
Sorry to
quick.
laugh.
No, no, it's good. I mean, with the update comes bigger stories straight out the gate, so I'm glad that, with this new Zoom update that we are abiding by the laws here. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Uh
Gotta.
did you had you felt pain like that before 2017, before this whole thing, and were you telling people about it and that they just didn't
Yeah.
pay it any mind? Okay. Did you
Yeah.
kind of feel
100%.
did you feel vindicated and like, okay, there was something wrong with me this whole time? Did you kind of have that feeling?
100%, man. It was actually quite a journey post that because to sum it all up, I think since I was about 7 is where I started experiencing this like pretty intense stomach pain. Um, but the only way to pick up that particular issue is with a CAT scan, like a CT scan. And obviously they don't want to hand those out,
Willy-nilly,
willy-nilly.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that is a medical
So
term. We are using the proper willy-nilly medical term for that.
that's what they said. They were like, "We can't do this willy-nilly, Joe. You gotta either learn to live with it or whatever." But yeah. So basically, I had years like it was kind of when I was young. They put it down to like stress and anxiety, and they were like, "Oh, kids get stomach pain." So anyway, I kind of grew up believing that it was more of a psychological issue. So afterwards, I was like, it
Yeah,
was
no,
real.
rightfully so. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I was like, oh man, I told you. Anyway, so there was a bit of a journey afterwards of being like, man, what? I don't even know what's real anymore, and like all that kind of stuff. So it was, it was bittersweet, but ultimately it was sweet because the issue was resolved, and it was like, oh man, I'm glad they caught that when I was 20, like really early 20s, because a lot of the people that do go through that, like the fatalities are often when they're older age and their body isn't strong enough to handle it. So that's where it all goes pear-shaped. So there's a silver lining, I guess you could say.
Well, Joe, I'm glad that you got it figured out, and I'm glad that your doctor was so eccentric in order to
Yeah,
get you into the hospital. That's fantastic, and I'm glad that that you went on to make this music.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, it's what do you say? That's something out of the I don't know what the saying is, but you know
Yeah,
what I'm
but there is one there. We're more medical term guys here. We're not like sayings guys. We know, like, willy nilly and that kind of stuff. That's more our speed.
yeah.
What was the band that you were touring with before this medical issue happened?
It's a band called the Flaming Arbies. It was a group formed around a artist called Arthur Arbies. So it was kind of like the collective of his music, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
That was that is the name, the Flaming Arbies.
Good name. So it was with their that band stuff that you started making your own stuff.
Yeah, like literally with their equipment. That's what I record apart from my tape machine and my guitars. It was that band's drum kit and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, so that's what I recorded my first record, Banana Sludge, with. So it all kind of star aligned, just it being like because I was pretty immobile, but it just so happened that all the stuff was there, and it was kind of like, you know, kind of would get up in the morning and I'd be like, well, it would be rude not to, to have a crack at this. So.
Right. Uh, and so this is 2017 that we're talking about, that the origin of Banana Sludge started.
Yeah, I believe it was 2017. it's a hazy period, but I'm fairly certain
Oh, I
it's
wonder
20.
why. Is there any reason
Yeah.
why that would be hazy? Now, going into this new musical venture, did you know what kind of music you wanted to start making, or did it just sort of come naturally? Like, oh, like I kind of like this sound, and I like this, and I like that, or
Yeah, it was a bit of both, but I was pretty strongly at the time, I was pretty invested in the sort of like, the West Coast, like where you are, the West Coast 60s kind of scene. Lots of bands like, I don't know, um where do I start? Like the Notorious Bird Brothers, the
mm-hmm.
Seeds, all that kind of stuff. I was really I mean, because that band I was playing with too, we were playing stuff very reminiscent of that era. So I was just kind of immersed in that world, listening to heaps of records. Um, and so that was kind of, what just naturally came out. I don't know if I was decisively like, oh, I'm gonna make a 60s sounding record, or I'm gonna try to make that kind of jangly stuff, but that was kind of the palette already. So yeah, and then so it's kind of a bit of that, and then also because I was finding my thing, it's not strictly that, but I would say that that's kind of the what its foundation is.
That's a good word. I would have said stemmed from, but foundation
Yeah,
sounds way more concrete. Yeah, I
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
It's a strong word.
It's a strong word. It's a strong word, and that's where it needed to be said. So you're making this music. Were these kind of ideas that were coming up as you're fiddling around with stuff, or is it some ideas that have been brewing for a while and you're finally hashing them out, or a little bit of both?
I think mostly it was all pretty fresh, like it was all kind of all just as it came. So yeah, there might have been like, some small ideas that had been floating around, like maybe like a riff or something like that. But for the most part, it was all kind of just as it came. And because I was figuring out like recording to tape, there was all kinds of things going on. It was like as it entered, I would just kind of like quickly try and get it on the tape, you know, and then be like, well,
Yeah, well,
uh,
while it was super
yeah,
fresh, just get it down real
yeah,
quick.
exactly. Try to get it while it's hot, sort of thing.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, it was all very spontaneous, I guess you could say.
And when you were working on this, do you feel like if you step back and try to hash it out before laying it down, that it would have changed into something else, or the idea would have been lost in a way?
Um, I I believe that there sort of would have been something lost if I kind of, I guess, tried to refine it overly. It's sort of, to me, the sort of like the essence of it is that sort of spontaneity and that sort of that live edge, like it's kind of, I think if I smoothed it over, it would be, I don't know, it would kind of lose that magic that it was. Like I've spent a lot of time now looking back at Banana Sludge and being like, because for so long I was like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. Like this is so whack. But now I'm kind of see it in a different lens, and I'm like, I think the sort of essence there is that immediate grab of the juice, and then just trying to like not necessarily like rushing, but that's just kind of that was part of the process, was that it was kind of like grab it now. You know,
Yeah,
take a
working quickly.
yeah, working quickly and just sort of, I think because also I didn't have any prior solo experience. Like I didn't have any, I was kind of building my own process, I suppose, or like starting to learn about my process. Um it kind of I didn't have anything to refer to. So it was kind of like if I had have stepped back, I think I would have had doubts and I would have ended up just scratching it, which to be honest, in the end, I tried to do anyway. I tried to keep that record from everyone. I mean, I kind of have an idea of how it all went down at some stage, but initially I put it out. My partner was like, just put it on Bandcamp and sort of like, treat it as closure. And so I just put it on Bandcamp as just Banana Sludge, no Joe Gad or anything like that. Put it on there for a small amount of time. Woke up one day and was like, I gotta get rid of this. This is horrible. Pulled it, not telling anyone about it, and then it kind of just found its way to being released. It was a bit of a serendipitous um, link up with the label that I now work with and all that kind of stuff. Just how it went down. It was, yeah, kind of bizarre.
Uh,
Um,
well, that's amazing that this sort of process just happened pretty naturally. It seems like.
yeah, very naturally. It was it all just on its own sort of, just kind of went on its own path without any push. It was all just naturally sort of lined up, one thing after another, and it was like, yeah, just it's like it grew legs. It's like the record just grew legs and went for a walk, and I was like, man, that's that record.
Oh,
That's
I've
Banana
seen that.
Sunday.
I've seen that
That,
record before.
get back there, you little bastard.
Before kind of writing these sort of things and hashing out these ideas with different instruments that were around your house at the time. Did you have any experience playing bass and drums in these sort of other instruments that I mean, because you said that you were playing guitar right before this in other bands and such.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'd had experience on guitar and bass. Drums, not so much. Again, like I had dabbled when, I don't know, band practices, when the drummer would go take a leak or something like that, I'd jump on the kit and be like, oh, let's see if I can lay down some grooves. Um, and they would come out very shaky. So I had the real new aspect was the and then keys I had sort of noodled on a little bit as well, but I could never claim to be, a drummer or a keys player or a proper basser. I'm a guitar player that plays bass, that kind of thing. So guitar is the like primary instrument. All the other things I could make do enough to make something work. Um, and that was it. So yeah, it was all pretty new. And then the vocals as well, that was new. Apart from, singing in the shower or whatever, that kind of thing.
Which you are well known for, of course.
Very well known. Here in New Zealand, there's few of us that, just that's our title.
Right. Did it take some time though to kind of find your voice in singing, or did it come pretty naturally as well? Or did was that the thing that took the most time to kind of work out?
It kind of it it came pretty naturally because it wasn't like, traditional singing. I was kind of I found a quirk, I sort of found a little quirk in my voice that I could work with. And the second I found that quirk, which was pretty quick, I just rolled with that. I didn't even bother trying to see if I could do anything else. So in a way it was pretty natural. I mean it felt very unnatural the second I had to sing in front of people and play shows. I was like, oh, that's right. I'm not a singer. But like I said, I just kind of work with what I've got and I run with it. And so that was sort of I feel like that was pretty quick. I mean, it probably helped that I was on a lot of morphine. I didn't really have that much self-consciousness at the time.
Yeah, that does help. Yeah. So throughout this making of the album, were you it was just solo, just yourself? Nobody else came in to hash out any ideas with you or
Yeah, it was very solo. It was very secret. I mean, there was later on at some point when the drummer of that band he came to pick up his kit and I was like, "Oh man, before you take it, can you quickly lay down some drums on this track here that I was probably having trouble with?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." Lay down drums. So there was that, but in terms of me sort of writing and recording and making it, it was super solo, like, almost to the like I was keeping it a secret. Like it was like I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing because I didn't want any, I was probably afraid of that external influence, and I was just like, oh, and particularly too because the sort of the head honcho of that band, if I was to bounce off of my those bandmates, there's some pretty strong opinions in that group. There was a right and a wrong way to do things, and I knew very well that I was doing everything the wrong way, and I
but it
didn't want
felt
to
so
be.
right, didn't it?
It
Yeah.
felt so right, and so I was like, nah, I've got to keep this on the down low. Um, even like, even when my partner would come home and that, I'd be like, shoving mics away and throw the guitar out the window kind of thing. So it was all very hush hush. Right, yeah, right up until it was finished and had been sitting around for a little bit. So
Yeah.
it was a strange, strange experience. Strange first record.
Was it kind of your first time working alone with music, or had you had some experience just kind of noodling around like that, not putting anything down, but just like hashing out ideas alone? Or was that more of a communal thing that you did up until that point?
It was so I definitely had experience prior to noodling for sure, like and kind of like ideas here and there, but just never really fleshing them out fully. Like it might have just been a snippet of an idea, that then could have turned into a song, but I guess I never really had maybe I didn't have the confidence, or I was just seeing it through the lens that like if I ever have a band or something like that, I'll do this with them, or maybe I can present it to the band that I'm in and they might run with it or that kind of thing. But I did have experience kind of noodling around. I had tried to make some projects previous to that, but it was never in the instrument, like the format was never like a traditional band format, like the instrumentation that I was using for that record was, like drums, bass, guitars. Anything prior to that would have had like drum machines and that kind of thing, just because, that felt like that. If you're going to do something solo, that's what you do. And I think like at the time, the whole kind of like bedroom producer thing and stuff, for whatever reason, that's the way that I kind of viewed it. Um, yeah, so to answer your question, yes, I did have prior experience, but it was a little bit different because it was a completely different mindset, different angle. Um, so this was kind of like, all right, I'm going to try and make, what, use the instruments of a traditional band, but just do it all myself. Um,
Hmm.
it's kind of worked ish.
I'd say so. I'd say it definitely worked. So the album comes out. Uh, did you start to know that people were listening to it immediately, or did it take some time to kind of gain some traction, or what was that kind of process like immediately following the release of it?
Um, yeah, the sort of the stages it went through for its release, like I said, I sort of dropped it anonymously initially, just put it out as Banana Sludge. no Joe Ghatt or anything like that. Um, and I don't know, I guess on Bandcamp you sort of see like some comments and stuff like that. And so there was a few trickles here and there of it being listened to. I think it got picked up by one of the NZ publications and they just done a thing, like maybe a little review about it, but it was kind of like, what, who even is this? Is it
Still though,
actually from New Zealand? I'm pretty sure it actually said that. It was like, are they actually from New Zealand kind of thing, or is it just someone, trying to be weird? And so at some point I pulled it just from, I don't know, insecurity. Maybe it was because people were listening to it. I was like, oh, all of a sudden just self-critical. Just like, nah, that I put it on Bandcamp so that people wouldn't listen to it. But like how it went down was I was approached by this label Third Eye Stimuli in Sydney, Australia. I guess I was approached. I had kind of already made a link with them prior. I think I'd been in touch with a song before. I think I just cold called them. I just sent them a song, and that was it. Like no information, just music. And they
classic. Just kind of
they're
just
like,
leave the name off and just send the music. Yeah.
yeah, and they were like, this is cool, whatever. Nothing from it because there was no like, I wasn't saying, hey, can I be on your label or whatever. I think maybe like a year later or so, Banana Sludge comes out, and I had been back at that point. I had started performing again with the other bands, and we had been playing with we were supporting the Babe Rainbow from Byron Bay in Australia.
Shout out to the Babe
And
Rainbow and Miles Mijovic. Amazing
yeah,
guys.
yeah. So, oh, it was actually Miles that so we kind of like, just done a couple shows, met those guys, said hello. And I was chatting to Miles and I was like, oh, like, what part of Australia are you from and that? And he was like, oh, Sydney. And, classic, like, oh, I know somebody from Sydney. I emailed this guy once. And he was like, oh, I know that guy. And I was like, oh, true. That's a small world. Later on, they returned to Australia and he was hanging out with Josh White, who is Third Eye Stimuli. And Miles must have mentioned that he had been, played some shows, met this character, Joe Ghatt. Um, and then that led Josh to, reinvestigate what I was up to. And he saw that I had released, or he saw that, oh, maybe I'm getting the story a bit wrong. That all did happen, but then something happened where he came across Banana Sludge on its own. And then he just hit me up and was like, I was hanging out with my friend Miles. He said you're a cool dude. I'm hoping this is what Miles and that said. This is my version of it. And then he was like, and I know that record is yours because you sent me that song once. That's right. There was a song from the record that I sent.
An earlier version of what was on.
Yeah, which ended up on the record, but the record it was just Banana Sludge. So he was like, "Oh man," he was like, "Can we like put that record out, or can we give you a hand and like release it, and we'll do like a release it on cassette kind of thing?" And I was like, "Oh, like if you like it, then yeah, why not?" And so yeah, so he sort of twisted my arm and was like, "Can we put your name to it, Joe Gatt?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I guess." And so anyway, we added Joe Gatt and then released it. So it kind of had two stages.
Right, but I mean, you were still reluctant to even put your name on it, even when you got the validation from Third Eye and Miles that like this is good stuff, and we want to put it out. You were still kind of trepidatious about, I don't know if I want to put
Yeah,
my name on it. Wow.
I'm telling you, man. I think like I don't want to speak for all Kiwis, but I think just we're just so reserved. Like we're so not confident people. I'm like, oh no, like it's not that good. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that self deprivation kind
that's
of
the
a
one,
thing.
yeah. Like
Ah,
we're just big self-deprivating people. I mean, again, I don't speak for all Kiwis. I'm speaking for myself, but
Joe, I'm glad that you met up with Miles. And again, what a good guy move of Miles. And if you haven't checked it out, go back after this interview and go listen to Miles's interview. He's just an amazing guy.
yeah, I guess yeah, but he was definitely a link in that chain. So, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I don't think he was aware at all of what he was doing. He's just a nice guy, you know.
Was the first song that you just sent without your name to Third Eye, was that Farewell? Did that ended up being that song?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
All right.
yep. That was it.
And that was the debut single from Banana Sludge.
Yeah, yeah. That's the one that was kind of the track that sort of got the ball rolling. That was the first song that I made. That was the first song that I actually managed to do on my own, and I done it on the tape machine. And the recipe worked, and that's where I was like, and I think that's why I must have sent it just randomly to Third Eye Stimuli with no context or anything. I think just because I was like, man, sweet, I actually done something. And also that track, I had finished it, I had bounced it off of the tape machine, and then I threaded up the tape machine wrong. And on this particular tape machine, if you thread it up wrong, it doesn't respond to the stop button. And so when it was rewinding really fast, it just flew off and the tape went everywhere. And so I sort of lost the actual tape version of, well, the real
The
the
hard
physical.
copy version, yeah.
I was like, man, I better send this to somebody just so that it's backed up. So instead of using a cloud service, you just send your song to a record label and
Right.
hope
And
that they.
that's a huge tip for those aspiring musicians that are listening right now. Yeah, you gotta don't ever save it, just send it to somebody else. And
Yeah,
then so
man,
they have it. Yeah.
I reckon. I mean, Dropbox, nah. Send it to send it to your favorite indie record label.
So even the the first draft of that song, you felt like that was it, like that was a cornerstone of what you were making as a whole with Banana Sludge.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It sort of set the premise. It it got the wheels moving. I I liked it, which was, you know, it just felt right. I was like, cool, I can work with this. This is my thing, I guess. So let's try it again a few times. You know.
So um Third Eye Stimuli saying, "Hey, let's put this out on a cassette with your name." You finally come to the conclusion that yeah, that's what should be done. And then soon after that, are you kind of trying to piece together how you're gonna perform live, or is that even in talks at that point, or is that the beginning of that conversation?
Yeah, it was it's sort of it it went through the process of being released officially through them. So that was like the official release. And then Josh from the label was kind of like, "Oh, hey, so like are you gonna play some shows?" And I was like, "Oh man, shows. Yeah, that's what you do. You put a record out and you support it and you play shows." And so I'm just kind of like anything that he'd say like that, I'd be like, "Yeah, of course." Um so I started trying to piece together a band at that point. It took a little while. If my memory serves right, we had trouble. I sort of recruited um, you know, my longtime friend. He lived in the South Island. I was living in the North Island, and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm gonna start a band and let's do this thing." Um, didn't I just made the decision for him? I was like, "I'm gonna come down and pick you up." So we went down and picked him up, and then we sort of road tripped our way back up, literally trying to find band members. We went through, the different towns of New Zealand that we knew and stayed at people's places and were like, you want to be in a band? You want to be in a band? But we sort of blew it because we just were like, we came on too strong. Like, there's one guy that we knew that somebody had pointed out and was like, this guy's an amazing drummer. And we just approached him in the street and we're like, you want to be in the band? It's gonna be good. Like, and he was like, these guys are weird. And I was like, man, we got to change our tactic here. So we came up to Auckland, and Isaac, Isaac Scheib, who's, he's like my best friend, and we sort of started music together. He um he stayed in my van. I've got like an old camper van, and he just sort of started living in it. And we eventually found a drummer. That drummer happened to know a keys player, and then we got some gigs and just sort of made it happen. So, but it did take a while. It wasn't that immediate. So there was a bit of a delay between the record being out and us actually playing shows for it,
Yeah.
but it's fine.
Do you recall the first show with the band?
Yeah, yeah. The first show was I recall it because of just how terrifying it was, because we felt so underprepared. So it was kind of like by the time we had just settled on sort of having drummer, guitar, bass, um, we had accepted a gig. It was actually our first gig was an opening slot. And yeah, it was terrifying. It was like we had like a week or something to try and pull together a keys player, and um we eventually got this guy, and we were just like, hey man, there's this gig, you want to do it? And it was, for us, it was a big show. It was like, I don't know, 400 people sold out, and it was our first show that we had no idea if if it was gonna go down or if it was just gonna explode, like nobody at that point had heard my voice apart from on the record. Yeah, it was terrifying in a nutshell. But anyway, it sailed. It didn't crash and burn, and it just got the wheels going for the live performance. So it was good.
Were you just so anxious to get up on that stage the first time to let everybody know what was up live?
Yeah, I was and I wasn't. I was very I don't know, there was a lot going through my head. I was like, man, I know I can play the guitar, but can I play the guitar and sing, and like when there's front of like people in front? And like I said, and like at the time it was like, wow, that felt like a big show. Like 400 people felt like a massive amount of people to be trying to do it for the first time. And on top of that, I had a conversation with a guy the promoter of the show was like, oh man, if this goes well, he's like, I run a big festival in New Zealand, and like I've already got your name penciled on the bill if it goes well.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh God, like, yeah, dude, this is terrifying. But yeah, so there was crippling anxiety, but then there was also that, like, yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll, and like let's just do it. So I think it was a healthy balance of the two, and it managed to solidify.
Did you play all the songs from that album?
Yeah, there would have been a couple that we probably didn't do, but it would have been, 80-90% Banana Sludge, and then a couple of other songs that didn't wind up on the record. We had a couple of like throw-ins there that we had just kind of quickly hashed together. Yeah.
So how did you feel once you stepped off the stage? Were you like, all right, I can do this? Did you prove to yourself this is it's doable to play the guitar and sing at the same time?
Yeah, it was sorry, there's an alarm going off. Yeah, it was affirmation, I guess. It was kind of much like the creation of the first song of that record where it was kind of like, okay, like it works, you know, like there's always stuff that I can work on and you know whatnot. But you know, we got from A to B with no real dramas, so it was yeah, it was totally like, yeah, cool, I can do this. We can do this as this group. So let's try and do it some more. And it all worked out. Like we got more shows off the bat and we got the festival slots and
All
whatnot. And
right, cool.
so
That's what I
so
wanted to hear. It was not only penciled in, it was circled and underlined.
yeah, it got the tick, which was good because I think that would have been a bit tough to swallow if it was like, yeah, didn't you know, didn't really I've taken your name off the list. I would have been like, ah.
Yeah, that would have been a tough blow, but luckily that wasn't the case.
Yeah, yeah, no, it was good.
So were you kind of off and running after that first show? Like, okay, let's start playing more and more and more frequently and da 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 da.
Yeah, yeah. So it was all kind of it was all go after that. Just sort of let's you know, let's do a few of these support shows. We'll take support slots when we get them, and then we started doing our own sort of domestic like NZ tour. And then eventually kind of over to Australia and doing there and stuff, and then coming back and doing it some more.
Was it around that time that you got the slots open up for All Allah's on their tour of Australia?
Yeah, yeah. That was we had yeah, it was all you know, like the domino effect from that. It was kind of like we went to Australia, done a tour, and then as soon as we came back, then we jumped on the Alalas support shows, which was yeah, so cool. Cool guys.
Were you headlining the previous tour, or were you support for the other tour before pre All Allah's tour?
The Australia shows, no,
Yeah.
that was our line, yeah. So
Okay, cool. Man, so I mean
yeah.
that really just all the jumping off point just one after the other like that.
Yeah, yeah. It all just kind of like lined up very nicely and just kind of happened. Which was great. And then the other last thing was, yeah, it was so sick to come back to. You know, big fan, big other last fan. Um, Stoked we got that support slot. Yeah, no, it was cool. Yeah, it was good. I'm just
Yeah.
having a moment of reflection right now where I was like, oh yeah, that was a good time.
Did they kind of have an effect on, or influence you in your own music?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like I said, that 60s West Coast thing, I was big on that. And then so the modern bands like A La Las, you know, you know, they've got that strand. I've always, you know, been into it, been a fan. Um, I love their songwriting, so it definitely has had an effect. You know, it will come through a lot of it subconsciously, I'd say, just from having listened to so much of their music. I don't really sit down and go like, okay, I'm gonna try and make a song like Alalas because let's be honest, let's just leave that to Alalas. But you know, it comes through, I think.
Yeah, was there a is there a song that stands out specifically from that their catalog that you really just gelled with?
Yeah. Oh, let's have a think about that.
I know, and I again, I'm sorry, that's an update question. That's a new Zoom update question there, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't mean to
yeah.
throw you off. Yeah,
Um, I always really liked. I mean, I've got some of their later stuff that's like names floating in my head, but I think, you know, from their early records, the really like accessible ones like Catamaran, I think,
good
stuff like
one.
that.
Yeah,
It just painted painted such a picture. You know, like it was kind of like, man, you could feel the sea breeze blowing on your face when you listen to that song, and you're like, dang, I didn't know that that was possible. Put the record on and there's salt in my eyes all of a sudden. They've got a whole world, that you kind of just want a piece of. Like they just paint that whole world, that whole picture. You're like, man, how do I get in?
So, touring with them, that was a huge thing.
It was, yeah, it was cool, man. It was a bit of a like dream scenario, to sort of see it firsthand, like sort of also just having that you kind of get that perspective, like a different, like you're like, wow, they're just cool guys. They're real. It's like I don't know, in a way as well too, they kind of make things seem possible, just how like chill they are. And it was nice. It was cool hanging out with them and playing like board games and stuff with all that kind of stuff, partying with them as well. They all came around to my house after the Auckland show, and it was,
Oh, that's
yeah, it was
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting to know them and that a little bit, briefly, obviously. Like they probably wouldn't even remember who I am just because, you know, they do it all the time, but it was it was good for us.
What was it like kind of bringing your songs to a larger audiences during that run of shows that you were doing with them?
Uh yeah, it felt really natural again, and I think because we had just done this tour in Australia that just went down really well, which we weren't expecting. We were kind of like, oh, this is going to be tough. But it went down really well, and so we sort of had this newfound confidence to just being sure in our songs and the way that we had arranged them to play it live. It all just was kind of like, okay, we're doing it the best we can. It's working well. So I think when we were doing the other last thing, it just kind of felt like, oh yeah, yeah, having bigger crowds, having their crowd, it was like about time.
Right. Well said. Well said, Joe. Do you enjoy the performance aspect of music?
Yeah, I sort of feel like it's one like one doesn't make sense without the other, if that makes sense. To me, it's kind of like, the writing and the recording and all that kind of stuff. I feel like without the horizon of performing them, I don't know, like it's like to me, it feels like there would almost be nothing to really look forward to. It's kind of like, yeah, this is going to be fun when we get to sort of like pull this apart and do it live and get experimental with it too, because I feel like with the band, with the shows, we change it so much, and it's almost like it becomes alive again, that sort of music. It's sort of just because there's other people involved, it's like it almost becomes organic again, and malleable. So I really do look forward to the live performance, particularly with just getting freaky with the songs, and also I enjoy it. It's fun. It's kind of like just get in front of people and do your thing.
I think it's supposed to be fun. I think that's a key point of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't like, I mean, part of the reason I probably can, bant on about how fun it is, like obviously in New Zealand, it's a little bit different here where we're quite limited. We can't just tour endlessly. We're such a small country. You can kind of bop over to Australia if you can manage, do a run there, and then come back. But, comparatively compared to, the likes of all the bands in your neck of the woods, they can get on the circuit, they can just go. So I can see why people, they tour relentlessly and performance for them can become a bit of a drag. But um, one of the nice things about I mean, it's tough at the same time that we're so limited, but it does feel fresh. It's almost like you're just grateful that you can do it, and you're like, cool, like I'm excited about it. It's hard not to be, in my experience. So it's kind of like it is just fun. I think if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't push it.
Yeah, right. No, that's awesome. I'm glad that it's fun for you, Joe. That's what I was looking for this whole time. Is it fun for Joe to do these songs? Is it fun for him to make this music and do what he's doing? And that's what everybody
Yes,
wants to know. Okay. Thank you.
it is
I was
fun.
I was kind of worried about that question, just asking it point blank like that. But I'm glad we finally, went over that bridge. So it's just smooth sailing from here on out.
We've got that ironed out. Cat's out
Yeah.
of the bag. It's fun.
Okay. When did you start working on this new album, Caper? When did that kind of come into play?
So I started working on it in 2020. I think we it was sooner. It was after, the doing that tour and the La La stuff and all that. That's where I was kind of like, cool, I'll put aside some time to make a new record.
Was that a conclusion that you came to on your own that you felt like, oh, maybe it's time to start working on some new stuff and getting some fresh songs into the mix?
Yeah, 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 big time. I think, to be honest, it was in my mind as soon as Banana Sludge came out. Um, as we've already covered, that self-deprivation thing, like Banana Sludge came out and I was like, man, I this is to my name now. This is People are gonna associate me with this music, and it's cool, but like I want to show them the other stuff that I can do, that kind of thing. And I want to, like I was really juiced on doing it again, but like with more um sort of like vision, if you know what I mean. It was like I know that I'm making an album this time. Whereas the Banana Sludge, I wasn't fully aware. Like I was kind of had it in the back of my head, but I wasn't like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a record, start to finish." It just so happens that I made a record in that time. But then it was kind of like, I'm gonna do another one. And so when we had kind of covered, giving Banana Sludge its time, and we'd promoted it pretty well. We'd played shows, everything was good, and then there was that kind of that time after playing shows, there wasn't much on the horizon in terms of shows. So I was kind of like, cool. Like I quit my job and everything. I was like, sweet, I'm gonna do this other record. And so early 2020, was it early 2020 or mid 2020? Some point around then, I started writing Caper. And then, the C word. I don't wanna utter its name. Yeah, but
Bleep him, cut his mic. He's gonna say it.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, anyway, so the record sort of started getting made around that time. And then we kind of went into that period, which initially wasn't an issue, but it eventually became an issue. So, just um, keeping on like surviving, that kind of thing. When I had to, like I said, I quit my job right before that, and it was like, couldn't get the sort of assistance from the government and all that. So it was like, no. So yeah, but it began in 2020, early 2020, mid 2020, somewhere in that period, was when I started writing it.
Did you explore any ideas that you kind of briefly had for the first album? Did you bring it into this second album?
Yeah, for sure. It was kind of like I had a bag of unused, and then I had an empty bag for like totally new. So I initially I started with songs that were completely fresh, and just riding that wave of like the inspiration of all the kind of all the music and stuff that was happening around me. And at that time, I had a really good influx of new ideas. And then when that kind of plateaued a little bit, I would then go to the old bag or the bag of previous ideas and try and inject them. And a lot of that was also reworking them, or sort of a lot of the ideas were like, maybe the bones of it were there, but trying to bring them up to speed with this sort of newer thing that I was going for. Um, and I had discovered at that point that it was better for me not to drum on the record. That kind of thing. So like having the influence of a actual drummer and all that kind of stuff, it opens doors. So I was kind of like, okay, I'll start shaping things differently. New dimension, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, they kind of allowed you to change paths creatively.
Yeah, and just open doors that were otherwise closed just due to limitations. Well, and that was my approach. Like it was a conscious decision. I was like, okay, for this record, I would like I love having the limitation and just sort of like, having this really kind of like shaky, naive approach. Like a lot of music I love is kind of feels a little bit like, it has that fragile essence due to it being because of like you can only do so much. But this
Right.
here, for me personally, it was like I want to know where I can go, and I don't want it to be bound to just um, how far I can go because of my own ability. It was like if I, throw a few extra ingredients in there, I feel like, maybe grow the tree a little bit
Yeah,
upward, outer, or whatever.
and that was when did you realize you wanted to go outside that perimeter, if you will? Immediately while working on Caper, that was just like, yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, fairly quickly because I had I had come up with a few songs and I had done it in my way where I was like I sort of recorded everything and then I'd put like um a drum track down to it. And at that time as well, like, the band had collected their gear. I didn't have access to it. So I remember I literally had like a cardboard box for like a kick drum. And it was like, okay, maybe I'll have a like trial run and see, like I'll send this track to like the best drummer I know, who is like an old friend of mine from the South Island. And I was like really scared to do it. I was like, oh man, he's just gonna straight up be like, nah, man, I can't drum to this trash. But anyway, I sent this track to him. He sent it back with this drum track on it, and I was just like, yeah, I'm doing that. That's happening now. So like, it's just so much better. And it just allowed me to then play with the other instrumentation in a different way.
Hmm. Kind of freed up some time to focus on these other things more, honing in on them, if you will.
Yeah, and also just like dynamically too. Like, I could ride this other wave that, was, brought to the track by this guy, John T. O'Connor, the guy that done the drums on the record. It was like, I could then sort of perform off it, I guess is what I'm saying. Like it was like I could
It's a
find
jumping
a
off
new.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was sort of like, yeah, cool. This is the direction. So like very consciously, second I had done that, that's what I was doing. And I'd also broken the bridge of um involving somebody else, not broken the bridge, broken the ice.
Both
It was kind of,
broke the
yeah,
bridge to then break the ice. Right. I'm with
Yeah.
you, Joe.
I
Please.
broke the bridge of naive, shaky solo to having more external influence. But it was like
Was that difficult? Was that process difficult at all, or were you excited to break the ice?
oh man, I was like, it was like putting my name on the record. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I was like, oh man, this means I have to share the music again, like with somebody else. And oh God. But the second I'd done it once, then it was like, then I was excited to then go on and share the tracks and then eventually get them up and track the record and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
um, it became exciting.
And I mean, this has been a 4 year kind of stint of
Yeah.
hashing these things out, hashing these songs out for this album.
Yeah. I mean, the 4 years, like it kind of was like it was all caught up in that sort of gray period that, where the world just sort of stopped. And like I said, John T was in the South Island, so he couldn't just come up and record. Um, so it was like I sort of wrote all the songs, and then eventually we were able to travel with restrictions or whatever, and then he came up and tracked them. And then to be honest, the record just sort of sat for a while, just sort of marinated. So it wasn't like a full 4 years of like slogging at it, but it was a full 4 years of writing, recording, and then marination time. Now
Marination
it's
time
just
is key, by the way, now, right? That's yeah,
totally, man. Like you don't want to serve food uncooked, it might
sure.
be unhealthy. So it's kind of like, I just so happened that I was using a slow cooker.
Was the process of making this second album equally as challenging as making the first one, or more challenging, or kind of a little bit more, a little bit less, and a little bit equal throughout the parts of this 4 year process?
I would say in hindsight, it became more challenging. I think there was a lot of that second album syndrome going on. There was the things beyond my control that made its own challenges. And then, I started off writing it and I was like, this is going to be an absolute breeze. I know what I'm doing. These songs are coming to me really fluidly. Got it in the bag. And so I had that attitude. And the second I hit the wall, I didn't have the tools to navigate the wall very well. And then it was kind of like the wall, and then there was all the other stuff happening. And it just got overwhelmed at a point there. There was a point in the middle there between 2020 and 2024. I'd say dead in the middle, 2022. It just became like stuck because it was like I kind of lost my deadline. I had a deadline. I lost that because of, COVID and stuff. So it was like, oh man, I can take my time. I can rework these songs. And so like in the middle there, I had like initially we'd tracked all to tape and stuff. And then I had all this time and I was like, well, I may as well rework that entirely. And so like I went back and I started tracking on the computer and doing it that way and just absolutely fried the songs. Eventually to realize I was like, man, the original tape recordings actually sound great. Delete all that. And that was a lot of time. That was like a lot of so there's all these crazy versions of the songs that are just absolutely ridiculous. Like I listen to it now, I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? And it's just out of this world. But that was largely just due to having too much time, and losing that deadline, which I was that was good for me. Banana Studs didn't have a deadline, but that just happened so organically. This was a little bit more structured, and because I had in my head that it was going to be released and it was going to be heard, there was these different factors in the mix, and so with those things in mind, that deadline was really good because that allowed me to not overthink it too much. But then I had the opportunity to overthink and overcook, and yeah, man, it went from a slow cooker to a freaking, I don't know, microwave.
Uh, do you feel like that you were going to learn that lesson eventually
Yeah,
in music making? So are you kind of glad now looking at it, looking at the release date of the final product, that you learned that lesson with this album and you can move forward,
yeah, man.
knowing with these tools that you've gained from this process, which is like a very strange way of going through making an album. I don't think that will be recreated ever. Um, so that's kind of a unique skill set that you've acquired.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's yeah, I learned so much. Like you say, it was unique. There was a lot of skills acquired just from the bizarreness of the whole thing. So and yes, I would have learned that at some point. And I'm really grateful that it was with this record. And I'm also really grateful that the record still managed to get over the line true to itself. That I did manage to have a perspective shift and be like, wow, the way I started and stuff, that was the way that it was intended to be. And it
Which is
eventually
also
found
a really unique way of coming to that conclusion. Maybe some people never reach that conclusion.
yeah, maybe not. And then I guess there's something lost. So it's all there's there's things about it that I am very grateful for, like the learning curve, the actual record I'm psyched on. And it's kind of pulled me back to the mindset too of, early 2020 where I had this momentum and this motivation. So yeah, all in all, it's really good and constructive.
How do you feel that now? I mean, as we're recording this, that we're about a month out from the actual final release of this album. How are you feeling about it right now?
Um, the I'm excited. Yeah, it's all now. It's the fun part, and um, I feel good. I feel a big sense of closure as well, just from the period. It's kind of like it's strange how much of your environment and what's going on at the time and that you sort of inject into, making music or whatever. And so, a lot of caper is representative of that time. And, it was a pretty bad time for everybody. But within that time, there was so much good as well, for me, like, but it's really easy to remember just the bad stuff. But caper for me reminds me of the good stuff and like, the things that were really positive and also just how much fun I had making the record, and remembering that. And so I'm excited to share it. I'm excited to get it out, get the weights off, be
Yeah,
like it's yours now, like, not mine anymore. So
that's awesome. With this eventual third album, do you feel like you will use both the tools that you've learned from these first two and bring it into the third to make it maybe way more easier than the second and maybe possibly easier than the first?
yeah, yeah, I think so. I've got far more awareness around my process. I would say that, I have a process, whereas, prior to, it wasn't really established. It was kind of like learning about my strengths and my weaknesses and what works and what doesn't, you sort of back and forth heaps. So now I feel like there could be a lot less of that. I don't want to speak too soon, but just with things that I'm, working on and stuff like that, there's a lot more, it feels a lot more fluid because of what I've learned with the second record. And I guess you sort of remember the strong don'ts, like, don't get ahead of yourself kind of thing, that sort of thing. And also learning patience is a really, really key thing.
Right.
So yeah, I'm excited for that too, just to knuckle down and get to work with, you know,
With
album number three. But yeah,
number three, whenever that happens, and we're not gonna
not
speak
gonna push,
anymore on
yeah,
that
but
because we
exactly,
we
yeah.
got we got this second one to listen to right now. And Joe, I really do appreciate you coming on here, sir. But before I let you go, we got to do some promo for this new album here.
Let's
So,
plug it.
Joe Gatt's new album, Caper, is out June 14th through Third Eye Stimuli Records. And the first two singles, there's only two singles off this one, right?
There's a third one coming out on the 22nd of May. So in 2 weeks, I think,
Okay,
roughly.
cool. All right, so before that comes out, you listen to the first two singles, which is Always Remember and Pale Blue Dot, which are out now. And the people can go pre-order the album through thirdeyestimuli.com. And it's being co-released with the Six Tones did share records as well, right?
Yes, yeah,
That's
in
awesome.
France, and also Ecodelic in Atlanta, Georgia, I believe.
Very cool.
Yeah, co-release
Yeah, you're
twice.
you're big time. Everyone wants to put this out.
Oh
That's just
man,
that just goes to show the people, hey, I mean, everybody's itching for this album, so go ahead and go pre-order it wherever you live, Atlanta, France, Auckland. Go pre-order that right now. It's available.
it's available. It's it's ripe and ready for you to pre-order. Hit that button now.
Yeah, and
Link on
all all that will be linked below on whatever you're listening to this on or watching this on. And Joe's first album, which we were talking about before, Banana Sludge, is also available everywhere to stream, and that can also be found at Third Eye Stimuli Records .com. Yeah, Banana Sludge is everywhere, and everyone can stay up to date with news and shows and everything else by following you on Instagram. Right? Is that the best place?
Yeah, yeah, Instagram for sure.
Good deal. And that's at joe.gat on Instagram. And again, Caper is out June 14th through Third Eye Stimuli and Six Tons de Chair. And do we have anything else to promote, Joe?
Yeah, keep your eyes peeled for upcoming shows, tour, and things to be announced very soon. And yeah, that's all I got.
No, that's good. I think that's a good amount. Joe, you're awesome. Thank you so much, sir. I'm gonna stop recording this and I'll talk to you in
Yeah,
a minute, okay?
thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Caper's out soon.